I'm with Richard Merrygold from iStorm, and I have been told I'm not allowed to talk to him about Love Island. We have to talk about privacy instead, but I think we're both a bit disappointed by that. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing at the moment. You're going back and doing controls assessments with various clients.
We are, yeah. So I'd rather talk about Love Island, to be honest, but as I say, we're not allowed. No. But yeah, so generally what we've been doing of late is we're talking to a lot of clients that got advice sort of last year. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk online about it being 12 months since the GDPR. Where is everybody? What's everybody doing? So what we've actually seen is a lot of clients want us to come back in or want us to come in for the first time and actually look at what they've put in place last year and do a reassessment, essentially. So are those controls still working? Are things still operating as they should? And sort of trying to give people that sort of extra bit of comfort. It's a bit like buying a car and then taking it in for its first service. Mm-hmm. You think everything's working all right on the surface, but people are keen to have a look underneath and just make sure that everything's running as smoothly as it should be.
Now we're hearing a lot about that people actually want to make sure their plans are mature. They're not just compliant, they're actually good. Is that what you're seeing?
Essentially, I'd say 50% of the time. Maturity is a really hard thing to achieve, and we've talked a lot today in some of the panel sessions and some of the other sessions about exactly the same thing. So about that sort of maturity and how do you demonstrate it. I think what a lot of people did last year was they did what they needed to do. Mm-hmm. So they wrote policies, they wrote procedures, they wrote controls, they did the awareness training, and then they sort of stepped back and went, well, that's done now. Maturity comes from looking back at those controls and those processes, assessing them, auditing them. Are these things still happening or is something slid? And then being able to report on it. So having some kind of metrics, having some kind of output that you can give to your compliance committee or your DPA or your audit and risk committee, whoever it is that's responsible, to say, this is the control that we put in place, this is how we know it's working, and this is the evidence that we've got to back it up. And I'd say it's probably 50-50. Some companies are there and are starting to report, and other companies are still in that mindset that, well, we did it last year, why do we need to start looking at it again this year? So it's a mix.
Did the right thing on paper.
Exactly, yeah, and you do, don't you? It's a tick box exercise, and I think that's what a lot of companies struggle to get their heads around. We've done it once, as I say, we ticked all the boxes, why do I have to go back and check it? But what we're actually seeing is that when you're going back and checking it, just because it looks good over here, actually things have started to slip. People have got moved jobs or changed roles, and that person isn't doing the same thing anymore, and you've got somebody else in, and slowly but surely, as with everything, things start to go awry.
Now we haven't seen a lot by way of enforcement or case law yet. So is that making your job a little bit harder?
It is. One of the questions that we often get asked is how do you engage a CEO, or how do you engage a board, or how do you engage an exec committee? And a good way to do that is with a bit of case law or a juicy fine, something in the press. The lack of that does make it difficult, especially, again, because it's been a year. It's like, well, no one's been fined. Right, we haven't seen anything in the papers, so it obviously wasn't that important. Mm-hmm. And you're sort of trying to say, well, it will come. The fines that have been issued have generally been against the Data Protection Act or against PECA rather than against the GDPR. But the ICO and the Irish Commissioner have both said in the next couple of months that you're going to start to see some reasonable size fines. So I think hopefully that will. I don't like using fines to divert people's attention, but sometimes I think that little bit of a nudge is not a bad thing.
And have you had any real horror stories? Anyone that thinks they've done it right but really hasn't?
There have been some interesting challenges with some clients. I think in some instances people genuinely believed that what they had in place was belt and braces, and actually when we've gone in and started to peel away the layers, things weren't implemented as well as they thought they were going to be. Changes have been made that haven't necessarily gone through the approvals process that was put in place, and I think that's going to happen. I'll be surprised if that doesn't happen in most places. But I haven't seen any catastrophic instances. I think that the biggest thing that came out of the GDPR and that sort of preliminary rollout was people just decimating their marketable databases. Mm-hmm. So believing that they had to have consent, they had to re-opt in everybody and losing huge swathes of marketable customers. I think that's probably was and probably still is the largest impact that we ever saw from the input of the GDPR.
And if you're looking forward to the next 12 months, what do you think we're going to see happen?
I'd like to see that maturity level increase. I think being here today, there's a huge number of people have turned up. 10 years ago, you'd been lucky to get 10, 20 privacy people in a room. Now you're talking 500, 600 people at a time. I think the next year, I think organisations will start to become more aware, more self-aware. They'll start to take more of an interest. I think it will become more normal, which will make it easier for businesses to hopefully find budget and hopefully find resources to be able to do these things. So I'm hoping it just starts to become part of normal business practice. And in this year on, and GDPR being new will be a thing of the past, and actually it will just be good business, and maybe one day will be as popular as information security.
Brilliant. All right, well, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.